Hi, I'm here with Håkan Spuhr at SHOT Show 2018. Håkan, thanks for spending some time with our audience. Now, this is going to be a slightly different video. We're going to perhaps address some maybe internet, you could call them myths, you could call them misperceptions that are going out there, about your product specifically and other products in general. So let's talk about the first one. Some folks are saying, well, if you get a Spuhr mount, you got to bed your scope, you got to use rosin. Let's hear it from the source.
Yeah. No, you don't have to bed a scope, you don't have to use rosin. The Danish Army, for example, they made a pretty extensive test with a heavy scope on a 50 AI AX rifle, and that worked just fine. So that there were absolutely no problems. But personally, I'm more the guy like, if it's worth killing, it's certainly worth overkilling. So I like to use rosin. It's a small protective layer, and I think it's doing really no harm at all. But if you don't want to use it, don't use it. That's fine. What is very important, however, the only time that I've heard about the slipping scope, it's guys that have cleaned the screws first. So they're actually removing the oil with acetone or something similar. And all our screws, they're delivered waxed. So you don't have to think about oiling them. But if you're removing the oil and not putting anything new on there, all the torque you put in, it goes into friction in the mount. And that is really really bad, because not much torque are actually affecting the scope at all, and then you get the slipping scope.
Because less torque equals less clamping force.
Exactly.
Hence the slip. So the moral of the story is, don't clean your screws unless you need to Loctite them.
Exactly. And generally, in any kind of fastener, about 90-95% of the torque goes into friction. So having a lubricant between the screw and the base metal is really important. If that lubricant is an oil, wax, or it's actually Loctite that is a lubricant, that doesn't matter. But there must be something, otherwise, and especially when we have aluminum as a base, because the friction in aluminum is really, really high.
Now, for folks out there who might be panicking because they cleaned their screws, what should they do? Oil them?
Yes, oil the screws and torque them down again.
So you're good. Okay.
So no issue at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So no need to say, hey, I need new screws. Just oil them up and you'll be good to go.
And this is not only about my mounts. This is about anything you torque down.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So now let's talk about QD mounts. Okay. You have an innovative design that we'll talk about, and what does it address in the QD mount world?
Well, any QD mount goes on a Picatinny rail, and most of the Picatinny rails that is out there have very sharp corners on the Picatinny rail, and when those Picatinny rails are machined, most of them are of aluminum, and they are machined to 90-degree corner. When they plate them, or actually hard coat them with or anodize hard coating, then the anodizing is actually building like this. So it's building on the corner. So what is sharp becomes even sharper. After some years use, some of this have broken off, and there is maybe teared up new sharp corners because of misuse. That happens. That's very common. So what we did, and we have a patent on as well, we actually have, it looks like a saw teeth underneath here, and what we actually have is we have limited the contact area against the Picatinny, so we're only contacting a small portion of the Picatinny and not touching close to the corner, and that way we are most likely avoiding anything of sharp burr standing up.
And the benefit to the user, I mean,
that's increased repeatability. So that's the whole idea.
Right, it increases repeatability, but I also understand it avoids the annoyance of having to readjust your QD system as you go from rail to rail, or do you still have to adjust?
That is not really the same thing. You likely don't have to readjust them, because there is two ways to gripping on a Picatinny. Either you are doing as Picatinny 1913 original was intended, using the 4 45-degree surfaces, the two lower 45 degree and the two upper 45 degree. If you do that, you have a very small tolerance for witness. But if you're doing like NATO now are recommending, and that's also a good solution, then you're using the two lower 45 degree surfaces and you're using the top flat. But because of the tolerances on the picketing rail, the wideness has a very, very big tolerance then. So on our QD mounts, we are using the 45 degree surfaces, and it's unlikely that you have to readjust the mount between two rifles.
Excellent. So more repeatability, less likelihood of having to adjust is the key value proposition there.
Yeah.
Now you also have an interesting value proposition, and as Steve well knows, I could go down a complete rat hole and turn this into a 30-minute video, but I won't, about all sorts of, this is just really interesting stuff. And just quickly, if you can just, tell the audience just what this one diagram here illustrates.
Yeah, there is so much discussions about having the reticle leveled or having the bore perfectly centered under the scope and so on. So in our catalog that you free can download from our website, I made a diagram where I first illustrate the scope correctly mounted perfectly over the bore, and you holding the scope perfectly in level when you shoot, and that is of course that you will have no deviation inside. On the next picture, the scope is held correctly to the gravity, but the bore is not centered perfectly under the scope. That means that I calculated here that the bore is actually moved 1/10 of an inch to the side. How much is that affecting the accuracy? And according to my calculation, it's about an inch on 1,000 meters. But here we have the scope in level. That's really important. Well, if we have the reticle unleveled, but the bore correctly under the scope, the deviation is 29 inches on 1,000 meters. So that's a lot. And the last thing I show in the diagram is if you are mounting the scope absolutely correctly, but you have it not level when you shoot, then you have about 30 inches on 1,000 meters.
So the moral of the story is keep your reticle level
to the gravity.
Level to the gravity.
It's really not that important if the reticle is straight over the bore. That is the least important thing.
And folks, this is just a teaser for what's in this book. There's a lot of stuff here, and if you really want to keep your reticle level, you've probably got one of the best systems out there to do it. Well, Håkan, we really appreciate you taking some time, not necessarily focusing on your products, but really doing a service just to shooters in general by talking about some of these issues. So we really appreciate you doing that. And of course, you can go to the website, Spuhr.com.
Spuhr.biz.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they've got so many products here.
There's one thing more that I would like to say, and that is the rumors around lapping our mounts or not lapping. I have never recommended anyone to lap our mounts. Never. Period. But I always said it's okay to do it. If you want to do it, just go ahead. I don't care. But I never lap my mounts, and I'm never going to start with it. But I think it's really up to the customer if you want to do it or not. Of course, he is degrading his the second-hand value, I assume. But apart from that, I don't see any problems at all with it. It's up to you. I have never ever recommended it.
And so, if they want to do it, if it makes them feel good, fine. Would it void the warranty?
No, it wouldn't. No, it doesn't void the warranty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, Håkan, again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.